Welcome to the world of scale modeling with Mike Ashe, where techniques, tips, and creativity come alive with dozens of tutorials, projects, tape-up reviews, and picture references to help you build better scale models and enjoy our wonderful hobby. Hello everybody, and welcome to part 3 of detailing and building the Revell Monogram 148 scale B-17G. In part 3, we'll focus our attention on detailing the landing gear, the wheel hubs, and what these parts look like in their final coats of paint. Before we get started, let's take a look at the landing gear on a B-17. The main strut on the B-17 landing gear is pretty stout, and the hydraulic mechanism is also fairly large. And of course, you've got the scissor mechanism at the bottom, which helps absorb the shock, both on takeoff and landings. The Revell Monogram kit captured pretty closely the stoutness of the landing gear as well as its height, and the size and stoutness of the scissor shock absorbers. What they didn't do such a good job on was the hydraulic reservoir for the brakes, and of course they didn't include any of the hydraulic lines associated with the braking system. And without further ado, let's get started on detailing the landing gear and the wheel hubs. I completed the detail work on the landing gear, and I must admit, it came out pretty good. And I'll explain how I did all this in a minute, but I wanted you to see the difference between this is what came in the kit, and this is the detail work that I did to it to enhance its appearance. I used this old Verlinden Productions B-17 update set, and I got to tell you, Verlinden did an excellent job on this and all their other enhancement sets. Everything fits fairly well. So I've used parts from this kit in order to make these enhancements. This is the Verlinden landing gear, and it really well detailed, but the problem is resin is not very strong, and this B-17 is going to be fairly heavy when it's done. So what I decided to do was use the hydraulic actuator system part that's supposed to sit in this cradle for the Monogram kit landing gear assemblies. And you can see I made a really tiny cradle here, exactly the way they did it in the Verlinden kit. And the way I did that was I took an evergreen H column. You see the H right there. And what I did was I used this file to file a round hole like this into this surface, and then I used my trusty Northwest short-line chopper to cut it to the proper length. It's a little bit of scratch building, but one of the things I'm doing here on building this kit is to show you how you can enhance an old kit and really make it look good and do some scratch building. So what I did was I made the cradle and I glued it in place with some tester's glue so I could position it, and then once it was dry I hit it with some super glue on both sides, and that created the cradle for this hydraulic actuator for the braking system. And then I bent wires using some photos that I had taken of a actual B-17. There's actually two that come out of here, but there wasn't room for it, so I just did one. Yeah, it's not 100% accurate, but you know what? It's better than what this looks like. So I did this on both sides, and it came out really good. Here's the other one. And the trick here is to closely match your wire. This is 0.019 inch brass, stiff brass wire, which is easy to bend, and I use a flat nose pliers to bend it and then cut it and shape it. And it looks pretty good. On the wheels, the actual B-17, these holes were hollow. And in a second here, I'll cut to an actual B-17 hub that I found at a crash site in the Gila Mountain Range, high above the floor or the desert in Arizona. And on that crash site photo, you can clearly see that these are hollowed out. So I did that on both of these. The other thing is that this wheel kind of has some play in here. So what I did was I added some 0.010 inch plastic strip and then sanded it down. It's like 0.05 now, but now the wheels sit much tighter. And when I glue these in place with some with some tester's glue, I'll be able to position them properly.
Here you can see the holes in the outer part of the hub associated with the landing gear. However, let's take a closer look at one from a crash site. This wheel hub is pretty mangled from the impact of the crash, but here you can better see the holes in the hub, and it's really easy to reproduce this with the Revell B-17G wheel hubs. All you have to do is drill them out. Just go slow. We explored this crash site and posted a YouTube video on this about 2 years ago, and I included a link in the description in case you're interested.
The other thing is, when you're gluing the kit tires together, put drops of super glue just on that center diamond tread there. And then you take one of these really, really small, petite, fine grade sanding strips and just carefully sand on the top of the diamond strip. What that does is, one, it preserves all of this beautiful tread detail that's on the kit part, and two, it really limits your cleanup work. So I did this on both of them. I tried this technique on my Monogram B-25G, and it really, really turned out good. So these wheels will look good. I tried the True Detail wheels, and again, the problem is that the hubs were just, the axle holes were just too small, and when you try to drill them larger, it ruins the part. And the Edward ones, which are very nicely detailed, you got the same problem. They tell you to cut off this piece here and install a smaller piece, but the problem is what that does is it creates a weak joint in the process. And the B-17 is a fairly heavy kit, so I didn't want to do that. On the tail wheel, this is what you get from the Monogram kit, and you glue the other part of the wheel here, and it's kind of difficult to tape and clean this up. So Verlinden provides you an accurate tail section, tail landing gear piece, and what you have to do, of course, is cut this piece off and sand it at an angle and install this piece. So what I did was I drilled a 0.060 inch hole in this piece and a shallow hole in this piece and pinned it with 0.060 plastic rod, slid it into place, and then glued it around it, and that made it a lot stronger. And you can see I did the same thing with the wheel here. That's 0.040 rod, and now it will be fairly strong once I glue it in place with some super glue. So these are enhancements that I have made to the landing gear. I keep dropping it, sorry about that, to the landing gear, and I really like the way all this came out. So when this gets installed inside the aircraft, be this one, it will let me get this piece in here. I have to come down here. It's going to look like this, which is almost like the real aircraft. So it really enhances the model hands are shaking a little bit because I've had way too much coffee this morning. Adds a nice level of detail. So, that concludes the work on the detailing work on the landing gear. I've got the landing gear all airbrushed and came out pretty good. I used Testors Metallizer aluminum and steel on the landing gear, and I really like the effect. And I also hit it with dull coat, Testors dull coat, and then I went ahead and used flat black and a detail brush and painted this small detail part here for the hydraulic pressure pump for the braking systems. And it came out pretty good, I think. Now, the bracing assemblies for the main landing gear, they're just one piece, and just airbrushed them with the same color. Did the same thing with the tail wheel, and it was all looking pretty good. The tail wheel itself, on this hub, this resin hub, the resin wheel, the hub on it is very shallow, so I just used a detail brush and painted it, and it came out pretty good. And then hit it with some dull coat to seal it. On the tires, they came out really, really nice. And again, I demonstrated this technique in a little more detail when I built the Revell Monogram 1/48 scale B-17G, but I take a piece of masking tape and lay it over the hub, and then take a pencil and with a sharp tip and outline the hub, and then use an X-Acto, number 11 X-Acto blade to cut around it, peel off that tape, press it back down, and then shoot it with some low pressure air and the paint color you want. And then when you're done, sometimes you get a little bit of bleeding around the edge, but if you just take a very, very fine detail brush and just around the edge where that aluminum color is, you can clean it up pretty good and get a nice dark, sharp demarcation line, and then hit it with some dull coat, and that'll blend the paint into the tire color. So that's how I do it, and it came out pretty good. So I still need to weather these, the hubs, as well as the landing gear themselves, but that'll be for a little bit later, and I'll show you how I do that. But these parts are pretty much ready to go.
This concludes Part 3 of Detailing and Building the Revell Monogram 1/48 scale B-17G, and stay tuned for Part 4. Have a great evening. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. And when you get the chance, visit our website at www.mikeashley.com, where you're going to find dozens of free PDF downloads, including tutorials, picture references, model galleries, projects, and my 5 original scale modeling books. Thanks to Ben Sound and Videvo for the royalty-free music, and happy scale modeling!